Today we're going to be looking at a collection of mods for The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. The first mod we're looking at is the Forbidden Knights aspect by juliesgloom. Now to find this armor set you'll have to travel to the ancient tree stump, which you'll find southwest of Lookout Landing. Now along with the armor we'll also find the Shard-borne sword, which we'll get into later. Now the armor provides a defense rating of 12. And just like the Ancient Heroes aspect, it takes up all 3 slots for the armor. Now unless you've been living out in the wild, you'll probably recognise the armor set, as it is based on the Knight's construct from Age of Imprisonment. And when I mean based, I mean pretty much identical, with it having the blue Zonai energy stuff going through the arms, chest and legs. We also get the glowing hair and blinking eyes, all of which I imagine was very hard to implement. Another great feature we have is the ability to actually take down the hood, which allows us to see the construct's luscious locks a little bit easier. And all we have to do this is press both the B and A button at the same time. And if we want to put the hood back up, we simply press the same 2 buttons. But the unique aspects of this armor still don't end just quite there. And if we get in a position where we can use our paraglider, we'll find that Link no longer pulls out his paraglider, and instead relies on these wings that come from the back of his arms. Now as far as I can tell, this doesn't offer any gameplay changes. What it does do however is make you look incredibly cool. Another thing you won't be needing is a torch, as this mod also provides a glowing effect. And while it isn't a particularly strong glowing effect, it should be enough for you to get around in dark caves and in the depths. One thing you might struggle with however is the armor rating, as it is only 12 and can't be upgraded, although it wouldn't surprise me if this was included in an update some point in the future. And the last thing I'll mention before we move on to the sword, the armor set also cannot be dyed. Now despite what I said a few seconds ago, there is one more thing I'd like to add about the Forbidden Knights aspect, and that is that it will work incredibly well with the Dark Zonai Tech mod by Aster, which normally just changes the colour schemes of all the Zonai items in the game, including things like the Zonite armour. And since this mod, I assume, uses some of the textures or parts from something like the Zonite armour set, it's also affected by the mod, giving us a unique colour scheme which isn't normally even found in Age of Imprisonment. Another colour change we can go with is Zonai Jade to Lapis Lazuli by KaleidoKirin, which doesn't change as much as a previous mod but does change a good chunk of the green to blue. Now moving on to the Shard-borne sword, the weapon deals 60 damage and is unbreakable. Now its appearance is clearly supposed to be a ghostly or ethereal version of the Master Sword, although it also rather looks like an ice sculpture, and instead of the Master Sword scabbard we instead get the piece of cloth on the back. Now the first time I tried to use this weapon, it seemed to be constantly in an awakened state, causing it to deal 90 damage and glow. However, after trying the mod again, it seems that this isn't the case and the weapon isn't supposed to be awakened all the time. I have tried to recreate this, but with little success. Now moving on to its abilities, it has the same effects as a regular Master Sword. For example, it has the invisible fusers and can shoot beams when at full health. One feature it has that the Master Sword doesn't is the ability to heal with every attack, just like any other weapon when it has one of the Light Dragon parts. I also just found out that this effect still activates when cutting down trees. And to go along with our Knight's Construct mod, we have Age of Imprisonment Map by Catzy. What this mod does is change the UI for the map, mainly making it green, but also changing some of the symbols to make it look closer to something from Age of Imprisonment. The changes also apply to things like the adventure log, character profiles, the album, and even the Hyrule Compendium. The UI for the camera also gets changed to green, as does the sensor. Now moving on from one Age of Imprisonment styled mod to another, we have AOI Weapons Blade of Light by iHori. Now to find this item you'll have to talk to Beedle in the Dueling Peaks stable. Now the item itself is found in between the arrows and Bright Bloom seeds, and will cost you 300 rupees. Regarding its stats, it deals 30 damage and has a durability of 50. Now again, visually the weapon is based off Zelda's weapon from Age of Imprisonment, and looks rather similar to the Zonai sword. One of the major differences is that the weapon's blade doesn't retract when you put it away. Also, the blade doesn't actually move like it does in the normal Zonai sword. The actual handle of the weapon, however, does differ from a normal Zonai sword, with it having a white handle and those small little tassels. Something rather unique about the weapon is what happens when you throw it. Now initially when thrown, the weapon will carry on in a straight line, and then after a few seconds it will fall down. Now I know that sounds rather stupid and like I'm basically describing what happens when you throw something, but what I mean is the object continues in a perfectly straight line and then has a very sudden drop off. Now when using fuses with this weapon, the blade will not be replaced, which means with certain fuses it can look rather odd. Although I found the Thundergleok fuse to actually work quite well. Now the next mod we're looking at is Zora Link by cadenw, which is a partial port of a Breath of the Wild mod. Now if you're wondering why this character doesn't quite look like the other Zora in the game, that's because its appearance is based off Mikau from The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask. One thing he has in common with the Tears of the Kingdom Zora, however, is that they all wear collars, or at least some form of neckwear, although I suppose the dog collar does kind of stand out. Now unlike our previous armor mod, this one actually is a replacer for the Zora armor, which means it has the exact same stats and effects. Now if you are looking to only wear certain parts of this armor, you may have a hard time, partly because it obviously changes Link's skin tone and whole appearance, but also to do with the proportions of the armor, which can leave you with invisible sections. There are however some outfits that work visually well with this armor set, mainly the ones that don't show any skin. My favourite piece of armor to combine this with is probably the upper body part of the depth set, making you look like some sort of strange Dark Souls NPC. Sadly the armor set can't be dyed yet, although it does seem to be in the plans for a future update. Although I guess technically you could dye this armor, it just ends up looking like this. And obviously since this mod is just a replacer for the Zora armor, it can also be upgraded. Now to partner up with our Zora mod, we have Very Fast Zora Armor by jiyunsun. Now this isn't normally the kind of mod I would cover, but it does work rather well with our Zora mod. Now it's fairly obvious what exactly this mod does, which is speed up Link's swim speed when using the Zora armor. Although sadly both the dash and spin attack don't get this speed boost, making them actually a slower way of travelling, when compared to the now normal swim speed. If you want to try out any of the mods showcased today, please check the links in the description below. And as always, thank you for watching.